The end of the 80s and most of the 90s were a desperately dark and depressing time for Celtic fans, who could only watch glumly on as arch-rivals Rangers romped to a record-equaling 9 league titles in a row, while they had to make do with 2nd, 3rd or even 4th place finishes in the league and a couple of cups. The 97-98 season saw Rangers aim to win a never-done-before 10th consecutive title, an achievement they would be able to stick up the noses of Hoops fans forever. Although not exactly plain sailing, Dutch manager Wim Jansen managed to make sure it ended at 9 for Rangers and won a league and cup double with Celtic that year. He left a couple of days after sealing the title and was eventually replaced by Slovak coach Dr. Josef Vengelos. Despite masterminding some impressive victories and getting the team to play some attractive football, Dr. Joe presided over a trophyless campaign. Just like his predecessor, he left at the end of the season, having spent a solitary year at the club. The last two managers had been experienced Europeans. The Celtic board went in a radically different direction for their new appointment. It was a gamble that did not pay off, and things spectacularly fell apart after just 7 months. On 10th of June 1999, Celtic announced the appointment of John Barnes as their head coach. Barnes was coming off the back of a successful playing career, the bulk of which was spent at Liverpool, where the left winger made 403 appearances and scored 106 goals as he won 2 First Division titles, 2 FA Cups and a League Cup. The Jamaica-born England international had hung up his boots a matter of weeks before moving in at Celtic, following a short and unsuccessful spell at Charlton. The Celtic supporters were highly skeptical whether Barnes was the right man to turn things around. This was a huge club and a huge job, and rookie Barnes had no experience in the dugout. He had been deemed not of the required standard to manage Championship side Sheffield United, who had turned him down the week prior. Adding a further level to the misgivings of the fans was the fact that the whole thing had serious shades of Liam Brady about it. In 1991, Celtic gave Irish attacking midfielder Brady his first managerial role. Like Barnes, he had enjoyed success on the pitch, winning an FA Cup with Arsenal and 2 Scudetti with Juventus. Although not entirely his fault, as the club was a bit of a mess at the time, he was a failure at Parkhead and failed to win a single trophy in 2 years at the club, while showing an extreme naivety about management at times, especially in his first year and especially around the importance and gravity of Old Firm matches.
The Rangers Celtic match is not unique. You know, I played at Tottenham and Arsenal, I've played in Inter Milan, AC Milan. The games are pretty physical because there's so much at stake.
Indeed, there may have been much more of a backlash about the signing of Barnes had it not been for the fact it was announced at the same time that club legend Kenny Dalglish was to be appointed as director of football and would lend support to Barnes, just as he had done while managing the player at Liverpool. It had been Dalglish who had vehemently vouched for his protege to the higher-ups, claiming he had radical and revolutionary ideas on how the game should be played. Chief Executive Alan McDonald made reference to the fans' fears in his statement. Appointing John Barnes is a high risk, but hopefully not too high a risk. We have put in place an enormous insurance policy in the shape of Kenny Dalglish, not exactly a vote of confidence. Barnes wasted no time in dipping into the transfer market to bring in the players he believed would improve the squad. Midfield and central defence were clearly identified as matters of urgency. His first signing was of a highly rated and exciting prospect from Eastern Europe. On the 20th of June, 19-year-old Bulgarian Stilian Petrov was bought for £2.8 million from CSKA Sofia. However, there was a significant delay in finalising the deal due to complications with his work permit. The Bulgarian's application was rejected due to not having played 75% of national team matches over the previous 2 years. Celtic argued that at 19 years of age, this would have been impossible. They successfully put forward the case that Petrov would enhance the Scottish game in front of a tribunal, the first of its kind. The player, however, was not available for selection by the start of the season. 2 days later, on the 22nd, Russian goalkeeper Dmitry Karin was brought in on a free from Chelsea to provide competition between the sticks. Despite rumours of a host of exciting moves, like for Everton's Italian defender Marco Materazzi, the only other business concluded in June were outgoings, as Simon Donnelly and Phil O'Donnell left on frees to Sheffield Wednesday. Barnes kicked off the month with a double transfer swoop, concluding deals for attacking midfielder Eyal Berkovic from West Ham and central defender Olivier Tebele from Sheffield United. The former cost a Scottish transfer record fee of £5.5 million and the latter was £1.25 million. Eyal Berkovic had spent 3 years in the Premier League, following up an impressive loan stint at Southampton with a 2-year stay in London with West Ham. A very technically gifted and classy player, Berkovic had been something of a creative force for the Hammers, laying on 26 assists in 74 appearances. The Israeli had become unsettled due to an infamous training ground assault at the hands of future Celtic legend John Hartson. It was expected that he would add some much needed quality to the final third for Celtic. Tebele was a tall and imposing centre-back who had been brought in from Sheffield United after impressing the watching Kenny Dalglish. The new rivals kept on coming as 2 days later Dutch left winger Bobby Petta arrived on a free transfer from Ipswich. His 7 goals in 71 appearances for the Tractor Boys were not exactly earth-shattering, and he was expected to be an experienced squad player who would improve depth. Rounding off the summer signings was 21-year-old French midfielder Stéphane Bonds, who joined on a free after impressing whilst on trial with the boys. He must have turned out to be total shite, as he never played a single competitive match for the Hoops. Barnes would have perhaps liked to bring in another central defender, and to my mind he was also a little light in the fullback positions. Celtic kicked off their pre-season preparations on the 13th of July with a tour of Norway, as Barnes ran the rule over his players and tested out his tactics and ideas. They beat HamKam, Aalborg and Kongsvinger to go unbeaten. Returning to the UK, Olivier Tebele gave Celtic Park a hint of the kind of defensive stability and assurance he was set to bring to the team with an own goal against Leeds. He did score in the next game however, Celtic's last friendly before the season curtain raiser, a 2-0 win over Newcastle. Celtic kicked off their SPL campaign on 1st of August 1999 away to Aberdeen at Pittodrie. As well as getting to see Tebele and Berkovic in league action for the first time, fans also got the chance to check out how Barnes' new 4-2-2-2 formation would fare competitively. Weghorst and Lambert were deployed as DMs and tasked with breaking up opposition attacks and building plays from deep. Ahead of them, Lubomir Moravcik and Berkovic were given a lot of creative license to feed the front two of Mark Viduka and Henrik Larsson in a variety of ways, either by exchanging quick passes through the middle or taking it out wide to firing crosses. Aberdeen were simply unable to live with the clever passing and movement of Celtic's 4 attackers, as they were mercilessly put to the sword. Braces from Henrik Larsson and Mark Viduka and a late cherry on top from substitute and exciting young striker Mark Burchell saw the boys romp to a 5-0 victory and kick off the John Barnes era in promising fashion.
For the second half particularly, because after going 3-0 up, we could have become complacent in the way that we played, but we didn't. We still pressed forward, we still did the right things, we didn't over-elaborate, and we scored another 2 goals. So
the following week, Barnes led his team out at Paradise for the first time against St Johnstone.
An incredible crowd of 60,253 turned up to pay homage to the coach and his new look team. It's the biggest attendance this decade at a British club match.
It was a fixture which had the potential to be a banana skin for Barnes, as the season prior, the Saints had beaten Celtic no less than 3 times, losses which had ultimately cost the boys the title. That all looked to be firmly in the past though, as the home fans were treated to a feast of attacking football. Moravcik and the brilliant Berkovic were once again highly influential, as Celtic strolled to a 3-1 win, courtesy of goals from Johan Mialbi, a Mark Viduka back heel and a powerful Weghorst header from a pinpoint Moravcik free kick. The match saw Bobby Petta make his debut as a late sub.
They came, defended in numbers, got everyone back behind the ball. So when teams do that, it's difficult to break down. But the second half particularly, we created a lot of chances. So yeah, I was pleased with the way it went.
There were, however, some warning signs regarding the fragility of the defence for those who were able to look past the comfortable nature of the win. Tebele especially never looked fully settled from the first whistle, and he was caught out by Simao following some clumsy defending. Such mistakes would surely eventually be punished by better quality opposition. Celtic kicked off their bid to qualify for the UEFA Cup in midweek against Welsh part-timers Quinbrin Town, more or less a foregone conclusion, it allowed Barnes to get some minutes in the legs of his squad players as Stefan Mahe, Craig Burley, Bobby Petta and Alan Stubbs, who's making a return following his recovery from testicular cancer, made their first starts of the season. Reggie Blinker and Harold Bratback also got runouts in a 6-0 thrashing. At the weekend, Dundee United and a sunbathed Tannadice harshly exposed the cracks in Barnes' team and served as a brutal reminder that despite the early fireworks, this was very much a work in progress. Celtic started on the front foot and nearly got some early joy from Moravcic's dangerous set pieces. Indeed, Larsson really should have made the net bulge when Lubo put it on a platter for him, but he uncharacteristically headed wide. United then shocked Celtic with a sucker punch. Berkovic showed why he wasn't a defender, allowing Craig Easton to drift away from him and lob gold with a delicious finish. For all Celtic's possession, pretty passing patterns and clever movement, they lacked penalty box penetration against a well-drilled Dundee United defence. When they did generate a clear-cut chance, the front men fluffed their lines. Oliver Tbilisi was taken out of the game with a simple long ball over the top, and only a great recovery from Gold prevented United going 2-0 up. Not long after that, and Tbilisi clearly hadn't taken any note of that near miss, and a floated ball from David Partridge flummoxed the out-of-position Frenchman, whose meek jump failed to stop Billy Dodds getting in behind and chip the keeper again. A late Berkovic stunner set up a frantic finish, but the boys could not find an equaliser, despite their best efforts. Stilian Petrov finally got to make his debut for the club, coming on as a half-time sub.
It's a disappointment. I expected to lose because I don't think one goes through a whole season without losing. But I think we lost in the right way, because I think, apart from the 2 bad goals we gave away, particularly the second one, with the basic error, it's the standard stock and trade ball over the top that we should have dealt with. But after that, we kept the ball, we created chances. I would have been more disappointed had we not created the chances and not tried to get back in the game, but the second half we did.
6 days later, and Celtic were back in the City of Discovery again, this time to face Dundee. Much of the chat before the match was surrounding Craig Burley's situation at the club.
They talked beforehand about extra time's revelation that Celtic's Craig Burley had been offered to several clubs in the English Premiership. Still no place in John Barnes' starting 11 for the Scotland midfielder.
The boys needed to forget the off-field noise and reverse the damage done at Tannadice. Instead, it seemed like history was going to repeat itself. There were a hatful of chances for Celtic and a sprinkling of Berkovic and Moravcik magic, but yet again, the killer final ball was all too often lacking. It took until the 68th minute for the dominance to translate into something concrete, as determined defender Mahe showed his strikers how it was done. Celtic pressed for a second, with Larsson being denied a great goal by the crossbar. 5 minutes from time, Vidar Risev was, rather harshly in my opinion, sent off. Celtic were all 6s and 7s from the resultant free kick, and Lee Sharp equalised for the D's. Just as it looked like John Barnes was set to drop even more points in Dundee, which would see Rangers open up a 5-point gap atop the table, salvation came from a familiar source, as King Larsson volleyed home to spare the blushes of his gaffer.
We could have scored 6 goals today, and then if we had scored 6, no one would have been saying this. As against Aberdeen, when we scored 5 goals and only created 7 chances, I wouldn't get carried away. The fact is, we created more chances today than we did against Aberdeen, but we only scored 2, so people make a big deal about it.
As I say, if the club are touting me about, which as far as I'm concerned they haven't been, then there's not a great deal I can do about it. It's people are always going to look at my situation if I'm not playing and wonder why, and possibly think maybe they can lure me away. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy here.
The midweek fixture saw Barnes' men finish the job against Coimbrane with a 4-0 victory at home to qualify for the UEFA Cup. Celtic hosted Hearts in the last game of August. Paul Lambert was unavailable due to a knock picked up against Dundee, so the generally unfancied Burley got handed a start alongside Johan Mayalbi in a makeshift midfield. Why Petrov wasn't played was a question no one could answer, as fans began to voice their frustrations over the 4-2-2-2 formation and Barnes' team selection. Utility man McNamara deputised for the suspended reset. In the end, it was a display which showed how deadly the gaffer system could be when it all clicked into place. Larsson and Viduka assisted each other for the opening 2 goals. Berkovic then sealed the deal with a brace in the second half to blow the Jambos away and remain within touching distance of Rangers. September started with a tough test against the stalwart defence of Kilmarnock, who had conceded the least goals in the previous season. Injury issues were also mounting. Reeseth took the left-back slot as Mahay had an Achilles issue, Tom Boyd was a long-term absentee and McNamara continued at right-back. Isle Berkovic was facing a spell on the sidelines with a hamstring pull. It transpired that Petrov had missed the previous match with an ankle injury sustained following a rambunctious tackle from Johan Mayalby in training. The pair nearly came to blows over it and had to be separated, adding more fuel to the fire of rumours of unhappy players. Barnes decided, strangely, to start Mayalby in Berkovic's more advanced role, with Burley in Weghorst's deeper role. You would have thought it would be the other way round. The last of the changes saw Mark Burchell replace the Croc Viduka. Burchell was a player in some form, having scored 4 goals for Scotland's under-21s the previous week. It looked like Barnes's boys would drop more points as wave after wave of Celtic attack ended in a whimper. The best chance of the match fell to Kelly's Paul Wright, who, in acres of space, could only hit the bar. Barnes then pulled off a bit of a masterstroke, raising eyebrows when he replaced Moravcik with Bobby Peta. It was successful, as the Dutch winger started off the counter-attack, which eventually saw the deadlock broken, as Burley fed Burchell with an incisive pass, and the young Scot angled the winner low into the bottom corner. Kelly were adamant he was offside, and replays show he probably was. Not a convincing win by any stretch, but it was 3 points on the board.
They've told me over the years they've not come here and done particularly well. But Kilmarnock played well, they battled hard, and they make it difficult, so I can understand why now, teams find it difficult when they come here.
Celtic had been drawn against Israeli outfit Hapoel Tel Aviv in the UEFA Cup and treated the fans inside Celtic Park to a dominant performance and convincing victory courtesy of a Henrik Larsson brace. Back in the league, Celtic were on the road for the second weekend in a row as they faced Hibs at Easter Road. Following an uneventful first half, the game sparked to life in the second 45. Cult hero Frank Soze was shown a second yellow for a wild lunge on Vidar Reeseth. From the free kick, Moravcik's teasing delivery was met by Larsson, whose header took a touch off Viduka and squeezed over the line. 10 minutes later, and Viduka powered home a second. Celtic ensured they ended September unbeaten with a hard-fought 1-0 win against Hapoel in Israel, a match in which Gold starred as the penalty-saving hero. The keeper had been voicing his displeasure at being dropped for Karine at the weekend. His 10 out of 10 performance showed Barnes who was number 1. October was a strange month and a crucial one when looking back on Barnes' tenure. It all started so well domestically as the boys dished out 2 humpings. The first, a 4-0 thrashing of Ayr United in the League Cup on the 13th. 3 days later, and the boys went 2 better than their opening day shellacking and humiliated Aberdeen 7-0. Berkovic opened the scoring before the informed front 2 of Viduka and Larsson bagged themselves a hat-trick each. King Henrik's being a perfect one, with the left, the right and the head. He passed the 50 league goals mark for the club in this game. Berkovic strained his thigh and would be out for a few weeks. As emphatic as the scoreline was, Aberdeen were woeful and allowed Celtic all the time and space in the world to put them to the sword. In his post-match interview, Barnes was under no illusions that certain things still had to improve. At times, we still gave the ball away sloppily. Better teams and better oppositions would have made us pay for that. The match in midweek was the UEFA Cup second round first leg against Lyon at Celtic Park, where a nightmare scenario played out. Talisman Henrik Larsson suffered an horrific leg break, which would keep him out for the rest of the season. The match itself was somewhat overshadowed by that traumatic incident, but Celtic fought bravely, were denied a clear penalty, and went on to lose narrowly to a long shot. Now, Henrik Larsson was not the type of player one could simply replace, yet Barnes was given the okay to look for a striker to bring in to partner Mark Viduka. The league match of the weekend was away to St Johnstone, and saw Barnes ring the changes, making 5 alterations from the team that pumped Aberdeen. Petrov was brought in and played at right back. Maybe it was the first time the Bulgarian had ever played there in his life, and it shows Barnes' stubbornness to stick with his formation, shoehorning players in rather than tinkering with tactics. Weghorst came in to partner Burley in defensive mid, and Peta and Blinker took both the attacking midfield slots. As expected, Mark Burchell started next to Viduka. Celtic were rather sloppy, and a poor pass allowed St Johnstone to slice through the shaky defence and open the scoring after half an hour through Nathan Lowndes. 3 minutes after the restart, and Mark Burchill gave the fans hope they might be able to cope without Larsson, as he scored a great equaliser. With things looking bleak, the game ticked into injury time when Morten Weghorst scored an extremely controversial winner. Main got a touch to tip his header onto the bar, and the ball was then cleared off the line. Hugh Dallas decided it had crossed the line and gave it. It's very hard to tell from replays, but it certainly did not look in. Nonetheless, a crucial 3 points were secured, bringing Celtic to within a point of Rangers.
Well worth our point in terms of getting back into the match. But in the last 10-15 minutes, I couldn't see where our winner was going to come from.
Just been told that maybe it was a bit of a dubious decision, but in the time after that Celtic, I can't remember too many dubious decisions going our way, so maybe do it tonight.
2 days later, and it was announced that John Barnes believed he had found the solution to the Henrik Larsson problem, bringing in his friend and former England teammate, 36-year-old striker Ian Wright. Undoubtedly world class in his day, Wright was past his best by the time he made his way to Parkhead. Yet Barnes insisted he would be bringing goals with him. I think many fans would have preferred that the manager stuck with Mark Burchill, who had been impressive when given a chance. The day after signing, Ian Wright, who had not been registered in time, had to watch from the stands as Celtic fell to a shock home defeat against 10-man Motherwell. Stodgy, static, slow and creatively bankrupt, Wrighty must have been wondering what the hell he had signed up for. It was a concerning display, and boos rang round paradise at the end. Celtic ended the month the way they had started it, with an emphatic victory in their 4th match in just 9 days. Kilmarnock were the victims this time as Ian Wright made his debut. A big reaction was needed after the farce against Motherwell. Celtic were a bit sluggish though, huffing and puffing their way through the opening half an hour before Coquard became the latest to profit from some poor defending heading in the opener. That proved to be the rocket up the rocker the team needed, and maybe Barnes let rip at them at half time too, as they came out hungry in the second half and tore Kilmarnock to shreds. Viduka banged in a 5-minute hat-trick, the first of which was assisted by Ian Wright, to turn the game on its head. Wrighty then got in on the act himself and continued his streak of scoring on every club debut he'd had, diving to emphatically meet Burchill's cross. Burley rounded off the Rogering 4 minutes from time.
Fans were tremendous. They stuck with us because you could see that we didn't deserve to be 1-0 down, and if you give them something to shout about, they're there.
Awesome, just brilliant, unbelievable.
No doubt in your mind you made the right decision.
35, 36 coming to Celtic playing in front of 60,000. You know, it doesn't happen. It's a 1 in a million chance.
As winter drew in, the cold, harsh reality of life without Larsson began to bite for Barnes. The month started the way it was set to continue, badly, as Celtic turned in a performance described by the press and pundits as sad and abject, as they were comprehensively outclassed by the technically superior Lyon in their own backyard, losing 1-0 and falling out of the UEFA Cup. It was the worst possible way to prepare for the biggest match in Barnes' Celtic career so far, the Old Firm derby. The fortunes of the two teams could not be any starkly contrasted. Rangers were still unbeaten in the league, while Celtic were completely short of confidence. Although Rangers were also without their main goal scorer, Michael Mols having been injured in midweek, history was not on the side of John Barnes, as a Celtic team have not won at Ibrox in half a decade. Ian Wright got the nod ahead of Burchill, and Stilian Petrov replaced Moravcik. The Slovakian had not been in the best of form recently, but I personally would have started him, as he oozed class and could produce match-winning moments of magic. The first half was a cracker, as both sides went hammer and tongs. The breakthrough came early as Jonathan Gold, who had been at fault for Lyon's goal in midweek, had himself another howler, fumbling the ball into the path of Jonathan Johansson for Rangers to draw first blood. Celtic showed great character to respond immediately, as Berkovic repaid Barnes' faith in him, passing the ball through the legs of Stefan Klos following a brilliant link-up with Viduka. 4 minutes from time, and Viduka nearly failed to capitalise on an Amoruso blunder, but Berkovic picked up the pieces and made it 2-1. In injury time, a penalty was given for a late Lambert challenge on George Alberts. Lambert was knocked out as Alberts fell. Losing Lambert and conceding the penalty had knocked the stuffing out of the boys, and it was a completely different team that emerged for the second 45. Toothless, rudderless, passionless, they hardly had a shot at goal as Rangers bullied them. They scored 3 goals in 45 minutes to win the derby 4-2 and pull 4 points ahead of Celtic with the game in hand. Reggie Blinker was cheered onto the pitch by the Rangers fans when he replaced Petrov.
Reggie Blinker.
To add injury to insult, Lambert lost 4 of his teeth in the clash with Alberts that led to the penalty, meaning Barnes was said to be without one of his most reliable performers for a spell. The dissenting voices railing against Barnes grew louder and more numerous. Writing for the Herald, Tom Shields eviscerated the rookie gaffer in a scathing article. The new regime will not do. If Barnes is a football prophet, he is too far ahead of his time. His system, whatever it is, does not work. Good players have become bad. Moderate players have become worse. The rot and lack of confidence has spread as far back to Jonathan Gold, once the cockiest and most secure of goalkeepers. Barnes has not only lost the dressing room, he has lost the entire stadium. John Barnes took serious umbrage at the questioning he received post-match, taking particular offence at the suggestion he needed to change his system. The international break meant that there was 13 days till the next match against Hearts at Tynecastle. All sorts of rumours were swirling. There was confusion about the future of Craig Burley and whether he would move to Derby County. Reports suggested that Miyabi and Weghorst were unhappy at the club and wanted a return home. Moravchik was linked with a coaching role in France, and apparently Bobby Petta, who had just come in the door, was being touted to different clubs. Things on the pitch were not getting any easier for Barnes, as the must-win match against Hearts was an extremely challenging one. After just 3 minutes, Gold, who was needing to be dropped to be honest, should have gathered McSwegan's cross and allowed Colin Cameron to bag a scuffed opener. There was a nervous and confused feel to Celtic, with many players looking unsure of what they were supposed to be doing in the John Barnes system that was coming under increasing scrutiny. Hearts were the most dangerous team and could have added a couple more to their tally. The sending off of goalscorer Cameron for lashing out at Miyabi turned the game. Ian Wright, who had been largely ineffectual up to that point, got the equaliser with a deflected shot. A world-class screamer from the recalled Moravchik secured a largely undeserved 3 points and eased some of the pressure on Barnes, although major question marks and doubts still remained.
I was happy with the points, obviously. We didn't play as well as we like. We didn't play as well as we can. But after 3 defeats, we're happy to get the 3 points.
And I'm fortunate with the guy that got sent off, because you have to say it kind of changed the game a bit for him.
On the last match of November against Motherwell, Celtic had a real chance to get themselves back in the title race, as Rangers had lost to Dundee in the earlier fixture. A windswept Fir Park made life hard for both teams, but Celtic were slack and full of mistakes and lost an incident-packed game 3-2. A nightmare November gave way to a dream December, at least in terms of on-field results. Following a crisis team meeting, majority consensus agreed to scrapping the hated 4-2-2-2 in favour of lining up with 3 at the back. And what do you know? Starting your players in their favoured position just so happens to get the best out of them, and they went the month unbeaten. They started off with a dour 1-0 win over Dundee in the League Cup. They then really started to get going, rollicking to a 4-0 win over Hibs, which saw Moravchik return to top form and bag himself a brace.
18 minutes gone. Easily put in. Good penetrating ball, it's confusing Hughes. Moravchik and that little turn again. Alberkovic, the old big, good play. Viduka coming in goal. Can he chip it over? Yes, Moravchik putting it in eventually. Weghorst tries to chip the goalkeeper, he has.
Then came that season's whipping boys, Aberdeen, and Celtic scalped them once again, smashing another 6 past them without reply.
Here comes Paul Lambert, Viduka, Lambert again! Derek White still down, Berkovic through for Mahe, onto the right foot! And now Celtic do the attacking with Moravchik. Away from White, away from McAllister, and away from Leighton. This time from Alan Stamps. Runs away from Mark Viduka, but he'll score now. That's a blunder. Weghorst, showboat time, and Blinker! Get away as far as Blinker. It's right! And it's 6!
In the next match against Dundee United, things threatened to go off the rails. A goal down at half-time, having missed a penalty, the boys had the chance to come out for the second half and show everyone what they were made of, and they did so, putting in an excellent second half showing to run out 4-1 winners. Their resurgence was sparked by the man who had become a bit of a laughingstock under Barnes, Reggie Blinker.
McNamara's cross, Moravchik's header, and it's Mark Viduka. Saved by Cole, but Rutschel will score.
Second half, we moved the ball well. Try to stress that, you know, we have to pass the ball well. We have to keep the ball moving because that's the only time or the way that you're going to beat the team as organised and as strong as Dundee United.
The last game of the year and the century was against Rangers at Parkhead. A win for Celtic would see them close the gap to a mere point, although they would have played a game more. The Millennium Derby was significantly less fiery than the previous meeting between the pair. Celtic looked a more assured side too, and Viduka had hit the post once before he opened the scoring with his 18th goal of the season. New signing Billy Dodds then equalised for Rangers. Celtic would curse their luck as they hit the upright a further 2 times. The game ended all square, a result which was much more favourable to Rangers.
First half was a game of 2 halves. I thought the first 20 minutes we dominated, we scored the goal, we looked dangerous. We could have gone 2-0 up, but hit the post and came out. And then they equalised against run of play, and then when they equalised, I think that they dominated for the next 20 minutes. If we can play consistently like we did in patches today, I'll be happy.
So improved was Barnes' side over the course of December that he was recognised as the Premier League's Manager of the Month. Off the field though, things were a chaotic mess, and the press were gleefully reporting on the turmoil behind the scenes daily. Firstly, December saw the conclusion of the long-running Craig Burley saga, which had been a sideshow for much of the season. On the 1st, he completed his protracted transfer to Derby for a fee of £3 million. The fans were not happy, as they saw Burley as one of the better players in the team and felt that he had been forced out by Barnes, who for some reason never really fancied the player from day one. This theory was lent some weight by Burley's comments upon leaving the club, repeating the same line he had been all season, that he did not want to leave the club. Weghorst and Stubbs publicly voiced their displeasure over the sale of the Scotland international, much to the disdain of John Barnes. The tabloids were reporting that more or less the whole Celtic team was unhappy, and they were linking everyone with moves away from Parkhead. Gould, Viduka, McNamara, Stubbs, Larsson, Bratback, Berkovic, Weghorst, Peta, Tabili, Wright, Blinker, Moravcik, literally everyone. The biggest drama involved Mark Viduka and his agent Bernie Mandic, who Celtic sought legal action against for illegally offering the Australian striker to clubs up and down Europe. He was being heavily linked with a move to Spurs. So vehement was the anti-Celtic sentiment that Dalglish and McDonald called a press conference to address the situation.
John Barnes will go the full distance in football, and I hope it's here. And I still firmly believe that. And there's nothing that's happened to make me change my mind.
We've had 8 managers here at Celtic in 10 years. No wonder the fans are frustrated, because we haven't ever given a management team the time to get it right. And we're determined, despite the pressures, to give this team the opportunity to get it right.
And then there was Rafael Scheidt, the farcical signing of this Brazilian flop, who has since been branded as one of the worst transfers in the history of football, was a death certificate for Barnes. Signed on the basis of a highlights video compiled mainly of heavy defeats with his team Grêmio, neither Barnes nor Dalglish or anyone at the club had seen the centre-back play in person, yet they forked out £5 million on him, for the money received from the sale of the reliable and popular Burley to be invested into this complete unknown. Well, he would have to hit the ground running. Rather than being a bonding experience, the team's winter break camp in Portugal only served to deepen the rifts in the dressing room. Berkovic was apparently the main instigator who was getting on everyone's tits. Allegedly, he was disliked by many and reported in the press to be a bad apple and a troublemaker. The lack of unity at the club showed on the pitch when they returned to league action on the 23rd of January against Kilmarnock. John Barnes was forced into a number of changes and described his team as down to the bare bones. Stubbs was ill and Tabili was at the Africa Cup of Nations, so Reeseth, Boyd and Miyabi made up the back 3. As Lambert was injured again, 19-year-old Colin Healy made his first start of the season in an inexperienced midfield next to Petrol. Blinker and McNamara were out wide with Berkovic, Moravcik and Viduka lending a more familiar look to the attack. New boy Scheidt was bedridden with appendicitis and not available to make his debut. Kilmarnock caused Celtic problems and could have taken the lead before Viduka scored with a deflected strike. Celtic cut frustrated figures on the less than fantastic pitch as Kilmarnock continued to make life difficult for them and scored a reflective goal of their own to level just before half-time. A flustered Celtic looking short of ideas could not find the winner and fell 6 points behind Rangers. Things were made even worse by Reggie Blinker throwing a wobbly about being substituted and Ian Wright having a shoving match with the 4th official in the tunnel at half-time. The SFA were set to discipline the striker following these comments he had made in his newspaper column. This silly 4th official kept hassling me. He kept pushing me, telling me to go to the changing rooms. He wouldn't leave leave off. He did this to me 4 times. I said I wouldn't move and pushed him back, just the once. He looked at me and said, right, you're done. Celtic faced Hearts on the 5th of February. They went 2-0 up within half an hour through another Moravcik stunner and a close-range Viduka header from a lovely Lubo cross. Then, not for the first time that season, Celtic fell apart and spectacularly threw it all away, going on to lose 3-2. We went ahead playing as a team, but then started to perform as individuals. My players began trying to over-elaborate. If we continue to play like this, in fact, we'll be lucky to finish second, Barnes said after the match. Just when it looked like things could not get any worse, came Inverness Cally Thistle in the Scottish Cup.
16 minutes on the clock and Inverness Cally Thistle take a stunning lead with a stunning goal. And yet Celtic applied the brakes to the celebrations within a minute. This was a superbly worked goal, eventually finished by Mark Burchell with a little help of a break off a defender. Totally swung in the corner, Bobby Mann won the header, and Lubomir Moravcik diverted the ball beyond Gould. It was all beginning to register on the Richter scale. Celtic in knots at half-time, and the support suspected there may not be a Houdini act.
Mark Viduka refused to play in the second half. I remember at the time everybody was getting a lot of stick. He came in at half-time, took his boots off and said, oh, fuck this. And he refused to play, and that's the first time I'd ever seen that. I thought it was a disgrace.
Barry Wilson brought down by Reggie Blinker, and Cally Thistle presented with the chance to blow the pre-match forecast sky high. Paul Sheeran takes a penalty. 3-1, and Inverness Caledonian Thistle are in paradise in more ways than one.
Outside Celtic Park, fans vented their anger at the biggest shock result in Scottish Cup history. The demonstrations were reminiscent of those that led to the Fergus McCann takeover just under 6 years ago.
First of all, we will apologise for the performance because it was dreadful. It was dreadful, very disappointing. We've gone out to the cup, we're down to the bare bones in terms of, hard-working, combative midfield players. So we knew out of possession they'd cause us problems.
There have been calls for your head tonight by a section of the Celtic support. Do you think your position is still tenable here?
Well, until someone tells me otherwise, I won't be resigning, if that's what you want to know.
Good evening. Within the last half hour, Celtic have sacked their entire management team.
I want to know why they sacked Barnes and that and kept Kenny Dalglish. It was Kenny Dalglish that started it, or why not bring back Wim Jansen?
I don't even think he should have been appointed in the first place. They should have kept Wim Jansen.
I'd like to apologise to the fans for putting them through probably the worst result in the history of the club. I can assure you all the players down the stairs are gutted.
Kenny Dalglish took over the reins, consolidated second place and won the League Cup. Many things beyond John Barnes' control conspired against him during his time at Celtic. He never had the full backing of the board. They wanted Kenny Dalglish back, who at that moment in time apparently came with John Barnes, so the rookie hotshot was kind of forced on them. McDonald's statement about him being a massive risk undermined his position from the get-go. The narrative is that John Barnes lost the dressing room. Perhaps the truth is he never really had it to begin with. The press quickly went from hailing Kenny and John as the dream team to relentlessly attacking Barnes. Even when his team were playing champagne football and smashing the opposition, they picked holes in it and criticised it. Tabloid journalists really hated his formation, but constant negative press attention was the reality of managing Celtic. They did the same thing to Wim and Dr. Joe. The biggest piece of bad luck was undoubtedly all the injuries. He was without captain Tom Boyd from early on. Paul Lambert was constantly out with knocks, and Berkovic missed a load of games. Weghorst, Mahe and others all suffered. The turning point, however, was losing Larsson. Even the most experienced of managers would have struggled with that hammer blow. It sucked the life out of the team and the fans. Unfortunate though he was, Barnes made plenty of mistakes. His summer transfer window was woeful and failed to address the key issues in his squad, something that was really exposed when injuries hit. His signings were majoritively rubbish. Berkovic, a talented player no doubt, was a toxic presence in the dressing room and did not justify his record-breaking fee often enough. Peta would go on to be decent but was poor that year, and there is a reason Tbilisi was known as Bomb Scare. Only Petrov went on to be a legendary player for the Hoops, but that debut year was tough on the Bulgarian and he did not play well. Barnes' insistence on getting rid of Burley and bringing in Shite was foolish. Barnes was also stubborn when it came to his formation. It yielded some good football, but there was never any plan B, and a more seasoned coach would have changed things sooner. He was for sure ahead of his time with some of his tactics. Playing out the back, for example, is the norm today, but he was often criticised for this in the press. As a manager, it was his job to convey his ideas to the team. He clearly failed in that. Ultimately, John Barnes should have been let nowhere near Celtic. A 35-year-old, just retired player has no business taking over a club the size of Celtic for his first managerial role. And truth be told, there was only one way this was ever going to end.
Good evening. Within the last half hour, Celtic have sacked their entire management team.